Hello again there, guys. Another Friday and another episode of People's Questions, where I answer all the questions that you guys have sent me over the past week. Today's episode, it's pretty standard. Nothing really out of the ordinary in terms of questions, and I don't even think we have any first-timers here, so yeah, I think it's going to be a pretty easy episode to go through. So, starting off with the first question of the episode coming from Phantom Sis. You want to know what are my thoughts on the recent Star Wars fan film, Vader, and your thoughts on other Star Wars fan films over the years. Well, I'll tell you this much. It was a hell of a lot better than anything we've gotten from Disney over the last number of years, and I would say the same thing for the last number of fan films that have come out over the past years. Although I was surprised it was only one episode. I thought, it would be like, I don't know, at least a few. But, I really hope that Star Wars Theory gets that money and we can get another episode because, for fan film, it was quite impressive visually and story-wise. So, yeah, it has my support. Next question comes from Casty J. Williams. You want to know, what are my thoughts on the death battle matchup between Batman Beyond and Spider-Man 2099? I don't really have too much to say on it. They seem to get their facts straight, and I absolutely do agree with the conclusion. Don't really know what else more there is to say. I mean, trust me, I'm not one of those people that is against every single death battle matchup that they do. Some of them I think they absolutely do their research and they know what they're talking about. Others, I think they're not understanding the context. But in this particular case, heck, I have no argument. I think they got it right perfectly. Next question comes from Harshly Critical, and you want to know, what did I like most about Resident Evil 4? I liked how it finally gave me a Resident Evil game that I could actually play and not feel sick, and I didn't have to fight with the controls. And I liked how it kind of balanced, it kind of blended action and survival horror. When you go to, Resident Evil's like 5 and 6, it's definitely much more action-based. When you go to 1, 2, and 3, it's just 100% horror. But I think 4 managed to balance out the two. Next question comes from Daniel Villegas. He wants to know, what do I think of Alex Mercer as a combatant? I don't know. I mean, the guy has some weird abilities and he absorbs people. I mean, it's been years since I played Prototype, so I don't really have much an opinion on him. So, he gets the job done. I don't know what. I think he's the bad guy in this sequel, but I'm not sure. So, I guess he went bad eventually. Next question comes from the Batman of Neo Gotham. He wants to know, what is the greatest feat of strength that I think a human can perform without him breaking his bones or tearing his muscles? Well, I actually looked this up, and apparently the current standing world record is held by a man named Paul Anderson, who apparently lifted 6,270 pounds back in 1985. So, I guess that's the greatest feat of strength. I mean, I didn't know that personally. I had to look that up, so there's your answer. Next question comes from the Paper Knight. You want to know, what would my favorite antagonist from a movie or TV show be? From a movie, probably the T-1000 from Terminator 2. I just like his presence, even though he doesn't have too many lines. He's such an intimidating figure, and you wouldn't expect that from someone who's so much smaller than the Terminator, and yet he's significantly more of a threat. And he lets his actions speak than his words, and when he does speak, it is just cold. Next question comes from Revelation Turtle. You want to know, name me 3 protagonists or antagonists that could beat Terra. Okay. If it's an antagonist, literally any of the final bosses, any of them in their final form would totally wreck Terra. Terra could not take on any of them by herself. She would definitely need help, as she needed help when she took on God Mode Kefka. Now, if we're talking about protagonists, a lot of protagonists can take her down. It's just a matter of, can you take her down before she transforms? Like, literally, Titus could do that if he could get, like if you knew what you were walking into and you just rushed her and went all out and you didn't give her time to transform, you're good. It's if you try to take her on in magic or you allow her to transform, then you're in trouble. But there's a lot of protagonists. So, Cloud could beat her. almost anyone could beat Terra because she's not the greatest combatant on her own. She's more of a magic user. Now, if you were saying other magic users in the protagonist line, I don't think anyone really can. But almost any protagonist could take Terra out. It's just, as I said before, taking her out before she either is allowed to use her magic or allowed to transform. She's not that hard to take down. Just a lot of people just underestimate her. Next question comes from Virgil. You want to know, would I like Capcom to make a Resident Evil Revelations 3 and who would I put in it? I particularly don't really care if they make a Revelations 3 or maybe they're trying to move away past it, but if they did, who would you put in it? I guess, Revelations is, let's see, who haven't we used? We don't want to use Jill or Chris again. That was in the first one. We don't want to use Claire or Barry or Morta. She's in the set. They were in the second one. So I guess if I had to pick, maybe we could bring in Rebecca Chambers or Billy Cohen, if that's what his name is. Like, bring them back together. Maybe you could put Leon in them. Or bring Sherry back or Jake back. And that's who I would think. And the last question of the episode comes from J-Bet. You want to know, was I surprised when Jaina Solo killed Darth Titus in the expanded universe? To be honest, I didn't actually read that story. I just know what happens. And from what I read, it just seemed like it was going to happen. He went bad. He killed his aunt. Luke didn't want to take him out. He was just bad for the galaxy. So I don't know if anyone's going to take you out. I guess your own sister, who was probably one of the strongest Jedi living at that time. So, yeah. And that concludes this episode of Other People's Questions. I'd like to thank all of you guys for making this episode possible. If you guys have any more questions you'd like me to answer in next week's episode, be sure to type them in the comments down below. But make sure you get them into me before Wednesday, roughly around noon, before I start filming the next episode. And like always, thank you guys for watching. You're awesome, and I'll see you next time.